down to the two final honorable speakers, from one representing New Hampshire Firearms Coalition, the other representing the gun owners of New Hampshire. It's Representative Hannon. Do you have a preference who has the final word?
There we go.
Well, you could go together, but
I think different topics.
and I know you'll be respectful. I know you're mindful that we have additional bills before.
I understand. I have to be support too. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Joe Hannon. I'm the Vice President of Gun Owners of New Hampshire. We're the NRA state affiliate. And you know, as the VP of Gun Owners of New Hampshire and a former state rep and a gun owner, I can't understand why any sane person would want to have more than 15 yard signs in a row. But that's irrelevant to the topic of what we're talking about. You know, we've heard many people talk about the word standard capacity, and that's really what we're talking about. It's not a large capacity, these are standard capacities. Every time you buy a firearm, that's what you get. You know, and these aren't mere accessories. You know, we're trying to treat it like something that's not a firearm, that is a protected right. And it's just an accessory, so it must be okay. These are actually essential components of modern firearms, which are necessary for their function. So banning them would effectively inhibit the way we are able to own and possess firearms in this country. There's no evidence that these restrictions improve overall public safety. We've heard a lot of the numbers. Numbers of murders committed with rifles is a minuscule number compared to the actual numbers of deaths related to firearms. Americans use 10 and 30 round magazines for the same reason that law enforcement officers use them, to protect themselves and protect the public at large or their families. There's no difference. It is, you know, we've heard the government does not fight wars. We've heard the government fights wars. It's not true. Citizens actually fight those wars. And that's one reason why we have this protection, is so that the citizenry is able to practice and use these weapons and defend our country and themselves. So, there's a few issues with the bill specifically that are very concerning. I know there were carve-outs for lever actions and 22 rifles, 22 caliber rifles, things like that, and curio rifles, antique firearms. We heard people talk about firearms that are antiques that can shoot well over that number. There was a gun invented well before the revolution that they called the buckle gun, that was a repeat flintlock. It could fire multiple rounds. It was capable of shooting 16 rounds of buckshot in one of those rounds. So they could, not only was it automatic, but it could fire multiple buckshots in one round. So it's an extremely powerful weapon that was around well before the founders wrote this. And one of the reasons why I want to bring this up is there are no protections in here for Class 3 firearms or automatic weapons. Now, most people think that fully automatic machine guns and automatic weapons are completely illegal and banned. They are absolutely not. They are highly regulated by the federal government. But New Hampshire is, at the last I checked, was the highest state of ownership for such weapons. There is more than one of those machine guns, fully automatic, for every individual in New Hampshire. For every 1,000 people, there's one of them in this state. So we have the highest number of those firearms in the state. There are no exceptions for a belt fed. So you can have a belt for your reenactment for a World War II event or a Vietnam event for an M60 or something like that, but it would be a belt about this long, and it would take less time than it would take to blink your eye to shoot off those blanks, and that would be illegal. According to this bill, there are no exemptions for that. There are no exemptions for people replacing or broken or used magazines. There is an exception for people from out of state to come in to compete in competitive shooting competitions, which is wonderful. But there is no exception for the people who live here to use a new magazine or firearm with those magazines to compete in the same competitions. So that is extremely unfair. We also, there needs to be some more understanding about what actually, not just a box with springs, a little bit more technical here. And an AR-15 rifle magazine typically holds 30 rounds, but that same magazine can hold 10 rounds of .458 SOCOM, which is a much larger round, but it only holds 10. There's no difference whatsoever in that magazine except for the whatever's printed on it. So if someone had a SOCOM magazine, a .458 magazine that was legal under even this bill, they could put 30 rounds of the typical AR round in that magazine. So it's ridiculous. There is no, we've heard people testify that there is no markings on a magazine as to when it was manufactured. Essentially makes this bill completely unenforceable, and it puts the law-abiding owners of those devices at risk of arrest. Simply because you have it, are you now guilty of a potential crime? You will be arrested. You could be arrested. So I'm almost done. Sorry. Hunting. We heard there was zero reason for anyone needing a larger capacity than so many rounds for hunting. May or may not be true. I used to live in a southern state where hog hunting was very common, and I probably would not have needed more than 5-10 rounds to kill a hog, but I probably would have needed more than that for the other 5 or 10 hogs that were mad at me with their buddy chasing me up a tree. And if you've ever been treed in a palm tree in 90-degree weather in the Everglades, I can tell you it's not fun. Just saying that. So we talked about the speed of reload. Some people can reload very quickly. It almost makes this immaterial in some ways, but it does make a difference in some other ways. I was in New Orleans after Katrina doing medical relief, and I can tell you that having a larger number of rounds available was very heartwarming when you're going through roadblocks of people that were trying to ambush and attack your ambulance that you were moving in and out of the city with. I had large quantities of controlled substances that I was using as a doctor, and it was very, very scary. We had to go up on the sidewalks and go through roadblocks of people who were trying to stop us. So another quick side to that is a reload. People talk about reloading magazines, whether it's quick or not, depending on your experience. There's something called a New York reload. New York reload is simply having 2 pistols. So you could have one that holds 15, or you can have 2 that holds 15. It's actually even quicker in some people's mindset to have 2. So really, if someone is intent on doing this, they just have to find a second or third firearm. Or even like the person in the Las Vegas shoot, he had multiple firearms. So the capacity of the magazine was only limited by the amount of time it takes him to do this and move over there. That takes no time whatsoever. And to end, my wife and I have been married for many years now, and on our anniversary, we often enjoy to go to the range and rent some automatic firearms, an Uzi. She lived in Israel for many years, and we like to do that. I really don't want to have to go to a pottery class instead. So please, ITL this bill and